Hi friends, my name is Emily from Pointer's Place, and today I want to share with you about my feeding journey with my first son, Dominic, and just kind of how it went. We've done breastfeeding, we've done exclusive pumping, we've done formula feeding, we've kind of done it all. So I just want to share my experience and things that we've done and what I do differently. Our feeding journey started before he was born. During my pregnancy, I saw a lactation consultant and we discussed all kinds of things. We discussed pumping, we discussed, things to help with supply. We discussed massages to do to stimulate lactation. We kind of went through a lot of different details, and I walked away from the appointment feeling really excited. Initially, when I walked in, my plan was to exclusively pump because an experience I had previously. And so then when I left the appointment, I felt more, I don't want to say guilted into, because I don't think that's fair to the consultant I saw, but she really pushed exclusive breastfeeding. And so I left the appointment not really feeling like I had a plan, but feeling like I was just gonna try everything that I could, and know that I could fall back on my initial plan if I wanted to. So I want to mention that because some of those details are a little bit more important later on in our story. So then after Dominic was born in the hospital, he latched for an hour post-birth, and he had a great latch. Not to sound really cocky, but I was really good at kind of helping him latch, and he was really good at getting a deep latch. But when we were in the hospital, it felt like he was just biting. And I just assumed that it was normal. I knew that breastfeeding was kind of uncomfortable to start with, and so I just didn't really worry about it. I just figured, well, this is just a part of the game, and didn't really mention anything about it. And if I did, I don't know that it really would have been taken seriously anyways. So during our stay in the hospital, he latched every 3 hours, and he latched fine every time, and it still felt like he was biting. But again, I just didn't really worry about it. So one thing I should mention is that when we were in the hospital, we were visited by a lactation consultant, and I mentioned to her that it just felt like he was biting, and she gave me a nipple shield, but she gave it to me in the wrong size. And so then he was like, every time he would feed, it would just be like chafing on my nipple, which only made the problem worse for both of us. And so anyways, I guess the night he was born, it was a really busy night at the hospital. There were like 3 other sets of twins born, and I mentioned this in my birth video, but she just didn't really seem to have a lot of time for us, and wasn't like, if she would have spent 2 seconds looking at me, she would have realized that the shield she gave me was way too big. And it just felt like she was just like trying to get through our visit so that she could go on and deal with all of the other patients that were there. So while she was in our room, she scheduled an appointment with lactation for over a week later. And I guess there was nothing sooner because there were like so many other babies that were born, or I don't know what the deal is. But so we had our follow-up appointment for over a week later, and I just figured, okay, this is normal, we'll just go with it. Then night 1, we brought him home from the hospital. Well, not the first night he was born, but the first night we were home, he latched, but he kind of was like getting really frustrated, and he was more awake. So he had woken up from what they call their birth nap. So like the first 24 hours after birth, they're pretty like just sleepy, and so when we got home, it was obvious that he was really hungry, and we tried to latch him, but he was just like super frustrated. And so finally, like after trying and trying, I mean, we'd get him on there good and he'd latch, but it was like nothing was coming out. And so finally I asked Bryce to like, this is like way too much information, but I asked Bryce to try, and he was like, yeah, nothing's coming out. This is so weird. And so, and at that point, my milk hadn't come in. And it also seemed like I didn't even have any colostrum, because no matter what I did before he was born and then, you know, after he was born, it was like nothing was coming out. And so, anyways, we kept trying, and after a while he was just like so frustrated and so hungry that there was like nothing we could do. He was just sad. And so finally I looked at Bryce and I was like, hey, I just remembered, you know, we got some formula samples from a company sent to us for free a few days ago. Will you just go and make, you know, a small bottle for him just so that we can feed his tummy, and then we'll like keep trying with this later. And so Bryce went down and made him a bottle, and we gave it to him, and I cried because I felt so guilty. I felt like I was failing him, even though by the textbook we were doing everything right. He had a good latch, he had a deep latch. It was just like nothing was coming out. So anyways, I cried many tears over having to give my newborn baby formula. Then on night 2 and 3, when we were at home, I finally, in the middle of the night, sent a message to the lactation consultant I'd seen during my pregnancy, just begging for help. I told her, you know, I've been using the Haka to try and pump. I've been using my Spectra to try and pump. I've been using hand massage. My husband has tried to get milk out. My baby is super frustrated. He has a good latch. I see that he has a good latch, and it's just nothing's coming out. We can't, no matter what I do, even though, you know, I was doing all of the massages that she taught me, it was like I just couldn't get anything out. And so I explained that to her, and I told her that we'd been supplementing with formula and that his latch was painful, and I just basically said, please help me. You know, we have a follow-up visit, you know, a few weeks later, or a week later. And so then the following morning, somebody replied and said, hey, look, we don't have any time in our schedule. Maybe you can reach out to the lactation place that we had the appointment scheduled with a week later that was booked, and see if they can get you in sooner. And so I just felt like I was reaching out to all of these resources and nobody was really able to help. And so I spent a lot of time during those late nights when I was trying to feed him just feeling so defeated and like I was just failing my son, because I just couldn't get anything out of myself, and he would latch perfectly but come off super frustrated because I don't think he was getting anything either. And so anyways, then on his, I think it was 3rd day of life, we had an appointment with his pediatrician, and she asked how feeding was going, and I told her that we were giving him some formula, and I mentioned to her that when he like was latching, it was really painful, and she was like, well, hold on, let me look in his mouth really quick. He could have like a tongue tie or a lip tie. And she looks, and like it took her no more than 2 seconds to say, oh wow, this is really significant. He can't even like move his tongue from side to side or stick it out. And so she recommended that we get that clipped, and she explained to me that with his anatomy, he was like, he would bite and swallow, not like let his tongue roll back and like bring the milk back. And so he wasn't a very efficient eater, which is why he was so frustrated with feeding. And then on top of that, my milk still hadn't come in on day 3. And I don't know if that's normal, but anyways, there was, even though I was still pumping every day at that point and like trying to get stuff out, we still could not get anything out of my breast. And so I think between that and him having this, both a lip and a tongue tie, it was just a super frustrating feeding situation. So we went home and we scheduled an appointment to have his tongue and lip tie clipped, but that couldn't be done for a few more days. And so anyways, we just continued supplementing him with formula, and we would try to latch even though it was painful and felt like it was pointless. And I was still trying to pump every few hours, just trying to get something out. And of course, nothing would come out, and it was a super just frustrating experience. I still felt like a failure, just all of these emotions. And on top of that, I obviously, Instagram had figured out that, you know, I was expecting and that I had had a baby. And so I was being like pushed all of this information regarding like breastfeeding and all the baby things, which is wonderful because a lot of it's helpful. But I noticed that I was getting a lot of like targeted posts where it would be like these moms that would pump and their haka would be completely full, or their like bottles attached to their pump would be like full, and they'd have to like change them before they could like keep pumping. And then here's me, I can't even like get anything out of my breast, and I felt so defeated. And I felt like, what am I doing wrong? Like, according to textbooks, I've done this perfectly. And it wasn't my plan. And I didn't know that it was even a possibility for somebody to like have an issue with supply to begin with. Everything that I had been fed was that, you know, if you have an issue with your supply, it's because you're, you know, not latching enough, or you're not pumping enough, or, you know, it's something you're doing wrong. And what I later learned was that really some people just have an issue with supply. Not everybody has this huge excess amount. Not everybody can fill up a haka or fill up, you know, multiple bottles per pumping session. And so the reason that I want to make this video and why I'm sharing so much of this is because in seeing all of those posts and things on the internet, while they were good in nature and they weren't meant to make me feel bad, I felt terrible because I didn't know that my experience was possible. I thought that what they were experiencing was the norm. And so I really just want to put this out there so that if somebody else is experiencing something similar to what I experienced, you know that you're not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes it's just how it happens. So anyways, finally our lactation appointment got there. We got to the lactation appointment, and they confirmed, yep, he has a lip tie, he has a tongue tie, and it must have been like that night my milk had come in because I had finally gotten something out when I was pumping there, which had never happened before. And So I was thrilled. I was like, wow, maybe this is it. Maybe all of our problems are fixed. I finally have milk. And while I was there, I hardly got anything out, but I was still like super excited because it meant that there was something. I had something to feed my baby. And so she recommended that I triple feed. And what that meant was I feed him on the breast. And then after I feed him on the breast, I feed him a bottle of formula to, top him off because I didn't have very much milk. And then after I feed him the formula, then I need to pump for an additional 20 to 25 minutes. So that whole process, we attempted to do it over the next few days. But honestly, it was way too much. Anybody who has, pumped or tried to double or triple feed knows that it's so much work. And I was willing to do it to try and, make things work for my baby. I think any parent would feel that way, but ultimately it really was just too much. So, anyways, finally I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't even want to breastfeed anymore. It's painful every time. My nipples are still chafed because I didn't realize that the nipple shield they gave me was the wrong size yet. And I was like, this whole breastfeeding thing that everybody describes as being this magical experience and, it's, you bond with your baby and yada yada. I mean, that's wonderful, and I'm glad that there are people that have that experience where they really bond with their child through that. I think it's so wonderful, but it wasn't my experience. I didn't really care to feed him directly from my breast, like, at all. It just didn't really appeal to me. It was frustrating for him, and it was just an extra step that I just didn't really want to do anymore. And so I was just pumping at that point. I would pump for him, and we would feed him that and feed him formula, and that was kind of that was what I had the capacity to do, and that was what my husband had the capacity to do. And so as I was pumping, I'll insert a picture, but the amount I would get, even, a couple of days or a couple of weeks after my milk came in, was minuscule. I mean, I would get like drops out. And so I was like, this is weird. Am I like not, are my settings on wrong, or like what is going on? And so I scheduled another appointment with lactation. And before we went to that appointment, we had his tongue and lip tie clipped, and that didn't, like, he was still frustrated at the breast after that appointment too, but it at least kept him from spitting up as much. He's a little bit of a cleaner eater now, just because he's able to really get that like suction around the nipple of the bottle now. So I feel like it really did help with his feeding, and definitely later it'll help with things like, speech and eating and all of that kind of thing. So we had that clipped, and then I had my second lactation appointment. And at this appointment, I had a different lactation consultant. And when we got there, I told her that we had been supplementing with formula and that I had been having issues with a low supply, and we talked about that. And what amazed me about this appointment was she actually asked me, she said, do you even want to latch your baby at this appointment? Do you want to continue with breastfeeding? And I said, honestly, I didn't think that was an option, but no, I don't want to. I'm more than happy to feed him from a bottle. That means my husband can help. That means that, he's less frustrated because he's used to that. Although he had no problem really going from breast to bottle or, different pacifier. Like, he really didn't care. But it was, we were comfortable with that, worked for me. I had no desire to continue feeding him directly from my breast. As long as he was getting breast milk, I really didn't care. And so finally I said, no, I don't want to. And she was like, well, feeding him how you want to, like, this is your choice, and we're here to support you however you want to feed your baby. And I just felt so much relief because I no longer felt pressure like, oh, you need to be, feeding your baby directly from your breast. I felt more empowered to make the decision that was right for us. And so anyways, I left that appointment, and I didn't really get answers about my supply. She just said, well, kind of wait it out. It might get, a little bit more, etc. And so I was like, okay, we'll just wait it out, see what we can do. Well, then about a week later, I ended up getting mastitis. And so a couple of days after the mastitis started, I noticed that my supply went down even farther. So the most I was ever able to get out of my breast at a time was 2 ounces combined in a 20-minute pumping session. And I confirmed that I had been using the right settings, like I wasn't, messing anything up as far as pumping. That was just what my body produced. And so the most I got was 2 ounces in the morning, and then by the evening I would be getting less than an ounce, maybe a half an ounce combined. So obviously my body was not even producing enough for him to, have breast milk all of the time, or even half the time. I mean, the kid is a big eater. So anyways, after I had mastitis, I noticed that even in the morning, I was only getting like an ounce. And by the evenings, I was getting drops. And so I called Lactation and I said, hey, something's going on here with my supply. It's going down. And so we talked about, my diet. We talked about all kinds of things. And she was like, no, by the textbooks, you're doing everything right. And she was like, oftentimes what happens with mastitis is it can really hurt your supply. And she was like, you could fight to get your supply up higher, and it could go back to where it was, but you're gonna have to fight for it. And I said, well, at this point, is that even worth it? I mean, I didn't even have enough to really feed him half the time to begin with anyways, and so is this really worth my time? And ultimately we decided no. It just wasn't worth the time commitment that I was putting in to get, drops out. I'll insert pictures. So now we've, gone from breastfeeding to exclusive pumping to now exclusive formula feeding. We've kind of tried it all. And I really feel like we've exhausted everything. We, checked my hormones. We, did all the different pumping schedules and latching and this and that and all the different things. And so the reason that I want to put this out there is to just be an encouragement to others who are trying to figure out how to get their babies fed. And I just want you to know that if you have an issue with your supply, if you are someone who from the start, struggles with wanting to breastfeed, or having a supply, or any of those situations, know that there's nothing wrong with you. And I still have a bond with my son, even though he did not eat from my breast, at least very much. And he's, growing and happy on formula. And no, it was not our plan A, but it's what we're doing. And if that is a decision that you need to make for your family, regardless of whether it's because of logistics or because of, you know, your own health or mental health, know that that is okay, and that there are people out there who are in the same boat. And so I just hope that this can be an encouragement to you, and I wish that I had seen videos like this before, just to know that I wasn't alone. So anyways, if this was helpful to you, maybe you'll also enjoy seeing some of my pregnancy updates and our birth story that was posted, and we'll see you next time.